Byte Club, what's going on? Welcome back to another installment of Debate That, the show where we break down one specific topic, providing different perspectives about it, and it's always about the world of professional wrestling. In the last one, we talked about championship reigns. Which are better overall, lengthy championship reigns or short ones? My name is Juan Velas, and here to debate about another topic that we're going to be doing. First up, from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, Keith Poshik with a very beautiful shirt.
Very beautiful. Very happy to be here, ready to debate. So let's debate.
Yeah, last time we were almost tied really at the end there. We got Ryan McNulty. Ryan, how did you feel about the short versus lengthy championship debate? It definitely got challenging there at the end, right?
It was tough, to be honest with you, because there's definitely a place for both. But as to which one was superior, I think it was a really good discussion.
Agreed.
And this one I'm really looking forward to, because I really don't think there is a right or wrong answer for this one. It's just a matter of the way that you look at it. And the topic at hand is as follows. Stone Cold or John Cena? Who made a bigger impact in WWE history? We're getting to the main event topics because whenever people talk about WWE, it's always about, hey man, like who's the face of wrestling? When you think about the WWE, who do you really think about? So it's the whole context, not just about the ring, not just about the character, and this is about Stone Cold Steve Austin and John Cena. So even though it's not about the gimmick itself, it's about that iteration of that superstar. So not the ringmaster, not the Doctor of Thugonomics. We're talking about John Cena as we know and love him since about 2004, 2005, and Stone Cold Steve Austin from around 1996 to about 2003. So, here to delegate who is going to be talking about who is yours truly, and talking about why John Cena made a bigger impact is going to be Keith Poshik. Talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin will be Ryan McNulty. So now these two fine gentlemen are going to have some preparation time. They're going to get their debates hats on. And they're going to debate that like nobody has ever debated before. So we'll see you in a couple of seconds. Preparation time is over. And to kick things off, we have Ryan McNulty talking about why Stone Cold Steve Austin, the Rattlesnake himself, made the biggest impact or bigger impact than John Cena in the WWE.
So there's no debating that Stone Cold is seen as one of the greatest WWE superstars of all time, and he made, in what was a pretty short run at the top, late 90s to early 2000s, in that short amount of time, he became a phenomenon. Just this pop culture relevant person who was everybody at that time, and still to this day, basically, know who Stone Cold Steve Austin is. You ask somebody about professional wrestling today that's not familiar with it, Stone Cold is one of the names that they're going to mention, or hitting, the things that went on in the Attitude Era. Steve Austin is, when you think the Attitude Era, you think Stone Cold Steve Austin, and that was a time in wrestling where, Steve Austin had merchandise sales like nobody else, interest in the product, a rabid fan base. Look at the crowds during that time. The pops that Stone Cold Steve Austin get is really like no other pop. In attendance was like no other, whereas today and during Cena's era, you'll see a lot of empty seats. It wasn't quite like that during Stone Cold Steve Austin's time. He was a major part of this boom period in the 90s and just created a huge impact like no other on WWE for transitioning them into the global power that they are today. All of Cena's success can basically be attributed to Steve Austin creating this landscape of helping the company become public and all of that. Steve Austin as a babyface was also a lot more successful. He was almost universally loved. I'm sure there were plenty of people who didn't like him, but the crowd, most of that crowd, 99% of that crowd was behind Stone Cold Steve Austin. And his feud with Vince McMahon essentially created this storyline, this authority figure versus the anti-hero babyface. That's something that's been recreated so many times since then, but nothing was quite like Austin and McMahon, which kind of really set the stage for storylines to come in WWE, ones that they've become almost too reliant on. And Austin, he really modernized that babyface role. You know, no longer was the clean-cut babyface the way to go, the Hulk Hogan type of babyface. The anti-hero became a thing in wrestling, mostly attributed to Stone Cold Steve Austin. He did so much for WWE in such a short period of time. It's insane to even think about. So Stone Cold Steve Austin definitely had a bigger contribution to WWE.
Yeah, like you mentioned, you don't need to be a wrestling fan to know who Stone Cold Steve Austin is. I know you can say the same thing about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but Stone Cold is a wrestler's wrestler, right? Like, everybody always saw The Rock as he's eventually going to go to Hollywood because he had that persona, but Stone Cold blended in so well in wrestling. And like you mentioned, maybe when you talk about John Cena, there's not a specific area of an era, but that Attitude Era, people act like that lasted for years upon years, right? So really excellent point about Stone Cold. So I don't want to talk too much about that because now I want to take it over to Mr. Keith Poshik talking about the C Nation master, John Cena.
So after the Attitude Era, there was this time in the WWE, where it really just tried as much as it could to recreate the Attitude Era and be this edgy product, but the world had moved on at that point. It almost like, dad jokes, fart, boobs. But that was until basically John Cena came along and became this, like, basically the poster boy of the new WWE and really took it into this next generation, especially with on a corporate side, the all the Make-A-Wish stuff he's done throughout the years, all of the press events that John Cena does. It really turned WWE into what it is today on a business side. From a character standpoint, he really, one of the worst eras in the WWE was kept afloat on the shoulders of John Cena. The kind of like out of Ruthless Aggression era into that weird SmackDown and Raw that just didn't really have much going for it. The only really redeeming thing was John Cena at that time. He created emotion. Not all of it was positive, but he was really one of the first superstars where you didn't have to like feel what the WWE wanted you to feel with him. It was cool to both love John Cena and hate John Cena in their own ways. He was really the first superstar that gave the fans a voice. Because with Stone Cold Steve Austin is awesome. I will say that right away. And it was cool to boo Stone Cold Steve Austin, but you booed what he did on the product, or you booed the character. You cheered the character. I'm sorry. You didn't like. If you booed him, that was faux pas. But with John Cena, I know, being like watching it myself at that time, you booed him because you wanted to. It was cool to boo John Cena, and the whole other side of there was a whole other side that loved to cheer him. He was so great at creating emotion, and still is, and was just able to hold the WWE together during that bad period. And I also think John Cena is the poster boy for both longevity and improvement. Think about John Cena then versus John Cena now. He didn't just have this short wrestling career. His matches were what it were, then he went on and did something else. He stayed around. He got better over time. It's so good, in fact, that you couldn't, for the reasons that you hated John Cena back in the day, it didn't apply anymore. Like, if you were like, oh, he's got the 5 moves of doom and can't wrestle, there came a point where that wasn't even cool to say anymore because it was just straight up wrong. And unlike guys like The Rock and I guess for different reasons, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Batista as well, he didn't just become this star and then go make his own path. he stuck around. There's nobody that's been on the top of the mountain as long as John Cena. He's really deserved everything that he's earned just because of how long he's been around, and he really is what the WWE is today.
As you mentioned, John Cena essentially excelled what professional wrestling is, what sports entertainment is. When you talk about both characters, like I mentioned, John Cena, we're thinking 2004-ish, talking about this John Cena till 2016, 2017. Stone Cold, it was that smaller period that even though you can kind of start until like in around 1996, really it was that boom period where it happened, and even at the tail end due to injuries, you could see that he was eventually going to make his way out, whereas John Cena has been able to transform himself time and time again. Maybe that's another argument, because like a lot of people say, John Cena can't wrestle. It's about 1,000 shirts. It's about selling the merchandise. But people boo him or cheer him, like you mentioned. People still love to get some kind of reaction out of him. Now, Ryan, the reason that I chose Stone Cold Steve Austin for you is because it's been documented on the podcast that you started watching wrestling after the Attitude Era. Yet despite that, you knew about Stone Cold, whereas maybe you don't know much about your Bret Harts, and I'm just speculating. Maybe you've seen a couple of the matches, but I get the sense that you lived through the Stone Cold era, maybe not live, maybe not as it happened, but something was triggered positively inside of you that made you interested in checking that out. So how was that for you? You watched it after it happened. Did it still have that big impact for you?
Well, part of it is I didn't entirely miss the Attitude Era. I basically caught from 2000 to I caught the last 2 years of the Attitude Era, but I missed the true height of Stone Cold Steve Austin. But the thing was, and much like Kurt Angle said in his Hall of Fame speech about it's what's more important than matches, it's creating moments, and nobody has created more memorable WWE moments than Stone Cold Steve Austin. So you don't even have to go back and watch every single Raw to know what Stone Cold Steve Austin is. You watch the beer truck, you watch him beating up Booker T, you watch him Stone Cold stunnering Vince McMahon, pouring Vince's car with cement. There's so many moments. Cement. Right. So many moments right off the top of my head. There's a ton more that you could probably think of. The whole Bang 316 thing where he had the fake gun to Vince's head. There's so many moments. And through all of that, you experience Stone Cold Steve Austin and know what he was about and what got people talking, what got people feverishly interested in WWE, a time unseen and has not been seen since. Like that amount of passion that you saw, how dedicated the fans were, all buying into the product. It was really like no other.
Here's a challenging question for you, Keith. We know that the company man John Cena is completely beneficial to WWE, and none of us can make the counter argument, right? Because from Make-A-Wish to all the charity work overall that he's done to the media appearances, but that's on the business end, right? Like that's almost behind the scenes. It's brought to life through the video packages that we see. When you remove that, talking about big impact, do you think that Stone Cold was able to just get away with a lot more stuff inside of the ring, inside of those arenas, when compared to John Cena, who, whenever we talk about him, it seems like, man, look at all the stuff he does for the WWE instead of in the WWE.
I think, yes, as far as the Stone Cold part, absolutely. He's created more moments than John Cena inside of a ring, but for every, there's not that, when it comes to John Cena's career, you don't really have that many memorable moments, but it's all about the emotion that he created, and nobody else has been able to do it on that level of John Cena, whether it be love or hate. Nobody's made emotion stronger than him. And in this medium of sports entertainment, where it's all about storytelling and creating that emotion, John Cena is on a level of his own. I would even say above someone like Stone Cold Steve Austin and Hulk Hogan. Whether it was, love or hate, there's nobody that comes close to John.
Yeah, I think that what you're kind of saying is, with Stone Cold, he was a very one-dimensional character. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but he was I'm anti-authority. That's the boss. I'm going to kick the boss's ass. But that's pretty much it. Would John Cena look back at WWE CW when RVD challenged, via the Money in the Bank? He went into one night stand as the villain, technically, and he cherished that, right? And I do think that's an element of John Cena that not a lot of people give him credit. If he needs to be the bad guy in the arena, not the villain, but the people that, that they want to boo him, he embraces that. And that is a whole
not
different
only
level.
That, sorry to cut you off there, but it eventually turned a corner with John Cena, leading into his feud with The Rock at WrestleMania 28, where John Cena became the face of wrestling. Like, he was the guy that the hardcore WWE people cheered for just because The Rock became, in that feud, he became everything you hated Cena for. Like, John Cena, for a time, was the face, or the poster boy for people that went against him. And that's quite the feat in itself, really.
Agreed 100%. And now, even though Stone Cold were talking about until 2003, he's been able to reinvent himself through his podcast. And then John Cena, whenever he talks, like, both of these guys have the gift of gab, right? As somebody would say for Enzo Amore. Ryan, for you, how big of an impact do you think Stone Cold in his podcast, what kind of impact has that had for us fans? Because he basically gives us a behind-the-scenes aspect. He's talked about John Cena where he's got to tighten up, the STF. So here he is talking to the wrestler, talking to the sports entertainer, but also talking to us as fans about, yeah, this could be better.
Stone Cold, in a way, his podcast has done a lot of great things and kind of like justifying our ridiculous fandom, where sometimes you like wrestlers dislike when people like talk about the business or whatever, but whereas Stone Cold's more like he wants to kind of teach you more and nurture that, which I really appreciate. Anytime I see that he's talking with Wade Keller about a pay-per-view, I always tune in because I feel like I learn so much about what goes into building a match when Stone Cold kind of gives his feedback about certain things. A lot of things you would never think about, and parts of matches that, if they had done this, it could have been a lot better. And it's interesting to hear that from a guy who, is, he's got the experience and knows what he's talking about. And then just how he interviews wrestlers, I think, is really great. Just kind of getting their perspective. Just someone who's also been there. It makes for a really great interview as opposed to someone who's just a fan who is interviewing a wrestler. Like, an actual wrestler interviewing another wrestler is going to ask some different questions that a non-wrestler wouldn't think to ask. And he's really kind of helped educate me on a lot of things I would have, never even known I would like to know.
And then, Keith, for you, when it comes to John Cena, you talk about talking smack, his promos historically against CM Punk, The Miz, Edge. The list can go on. There's something about John Cena. We've talked about this on the podcast, the switch, right? He has the Cena promos, but then when he wants, he can just switch things up, and there's just this fire where he blurs the lines between reality and fiction. It's almost like, whoa, slow down there. But at the same time, that's what we like, right? That blurring the lines is what he's saying based on his own personal opinion. Is it based on John Cena, the character? Are they even different? How does that contribute to the product that you watch as a fan?
I think they're very essential tools because when you think John Cena, you think that Cena wins lull for the most part. Like, Cena goes against a guy, ends up winning, but when he turns that switch on, and then the person he's feuding with actually beats him. Think about people like Edge, like Daniel Bryan, like AJ Styles. They are instant superstars. It does so much for building everybody around him. In wrestling, you're only as good as your opponent, right? And though there has been some casualties in the years to John Cena, he's done great things just for building some key superstars, Hall of Famers, and the lot. And those promos go a very far way in that because you're blurring those lines. In the same way that John Cena blurred the lines as far as characters, like the good guys and bad guys, he also blurs the lines in like the product and the product behind the scenes and like in front of the camera so well.
Thanks to both of you regarding about who won the argument, for me, honestly, I have a really hard time picking one, and here's why, and this is why I also want everybody listening and watching to give the feedback. The primary point that that Ryan attributed to is that Cena's success is attributed to Stone Cold. Stone Cold was at an era where WCW existed, right? So it wasn't just WWE. They needed to beat the competition. Henceforth, while we got all the moments that Keith said that, Stone Cold has even had more moments than John Cena has in comparison. John Cena goes on Talking Smack. John Cena was the doctor of thugonomics. But Stone Cold, whether it is the fake gun to Vince's head, whether it is the crazy segments with Kurt Angle or Triple H and all that backstage, his character was necessary in that era, whereas now, the fans that are on the internet, we may complain about stuff, but look at merchandise sales. Look at maybe not arenas, but the networks being successful, right? So it's just two completely different eras, but both guys have had this impact. When you think about John Cena, anybody that's on a match with John Cena, I know the debate is that sometimes like The Miz versus John Cena at WrestleMania turns into a nothing thing, and we're disappointed, and we're not here to sugarcoat those things, but there's something to a John Cena match where the match is second fiddle to the audience in that match. And Stone Cold, the Attitude Era was riled up for anything. You look at a Road Dogg, you look at a New Age Outlaws match, and everybody cared about that as well. So in that era, people naturally cared about everything, whereas with John Cena, we're not here to talk about WWE hasn't made more stars since after Cena, which we can kind of agree on. But John Cena himself, you could almost make the argument, he rose up so damn much that how do you even make another John Cena? Can you make another John Cena? We have Hulk Hogan, we have The Rock, we have Stone Cold, we have John Cena. We've tried with The Miz, we've tried with so many people, so that's more of a compliment to John Cena and Stone Cold than anything else. So overall, I would now like to give you guys a sort of a closing comment for the opposite side. So why do you think, Ryan, that John Cena did make an impact? I know you're also a huge John Cena fan. And Keith, as somebody that did live through most of the Attitude Era, if not all of it, what impact do you think Stone Cold made for you as a fan? This is not talking about politics, talking about news. Us as fans enjoying it when it happened. Let's start it with Keith.
I mean, to be blunt, Stone Cold Steve Austin saved the WWF at the time. If he did not come along, it would have lost to WCW because he was really the answer to the edginess that the NWO had over in WCW, and just that alone, like being that cool crack a beer, beat up your boss guy, it changed professional wrestling, period. And even before that, like when you think Stone Cold Steve Austin, it's very easy to think about everything after WrestleMania 14 with his match with Shawn Michaels. But even before that, he was doing some crazy things with Bret the Hitman Hart that led up to their WrestleMania match. Very, very edgy stuff. Everybody knows The Gun and Brian Pillman, that whole crazy situation. Stone Cold did a lot of good during his run, but it fizzled out in the end. Like everything after WrestleMania 17 might as well shouldn't exist for Stone Cold Steve Austin. Let's because everything he had. Let's not talk about the alliance. But everything
Curtin Austin was totally worth being a thing.
Match-wise, yes.
What?
But for
comedy?
But for somebody that created all these awesome badass moments to go and become a comedic relief is kind of disappointing in the long run. Like going from basically getting arrested by the police and bringing a Zamboni in and beating the shit out of your boss all on the same night to playing a fiddle and
he was winding down. You could tell that physically speaking, he couldn't do a lot. So he also couldn't be that character that he used to be because he just can't back that up.
Indeed.
So Ryan, what about you with John Cena?
John Cena, I think, much like Steve Austin, they are products of their time. You know, during the 90s, there was more of like a rebellious culture. So Austin really fit with that. And then the country, like the United States and I think a lot of the world, we all kind of like took a step back. And it's a more sensitive culture that we live in, and John Cena is a more friendly face to have as the top star of your company, especially, which I think the most important thing that Cena has really done for WWE, which is to help WWE expand globally and become this global empire. Like, I think Austin really got WWE to a state that they could really become this, put them in a position that then John Cena could take the ball and help them become more global. And John Cena is, I think, the perfect person to do that, because he says all the right things. He's, he's very loyal to WWE, and he's just the right person to do that. And I think that is the true impact of John Cena, is that because of that, they can expand more in countries like India, and they're working towards expanding more in China. And Cena is the one that is helping them do that.
You can't deny the impact that both of these superstars had in the world of wrestling. I strongly do wish that in 10 years, we as fans can sit down and talk about the iteration after John Cena. Who is that? Because to this day, there's just
Roman Reigns.
It's the crowd could be there in terms of emotional investment, but it's questionable, right, as to why that crowd boos him or cheers him or whatever they do. But we're still not feeling that next iteration. So everybody watching now, we hope you've enjoyed this nice edition of Debate That. Let us know who made the more convincing argument in Debate That. Is it Keith with John Cena, or is it Mr. McNulty with Stone Cold Steve Austin, the rattlesnake himself? If you like this video, do us a favor. Either like us, give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you're on VidMe, upvote, follow, and share. Get the word out, share everything that it is we do on social media so the Byte Club can grow and grow and grow. And if you want to help us grow, as a matter of fact, all you got to do is go over to patreon.com/bytethat. We got a ton of different features. Thanks to your contributions, we can grow. We can do a lot more. We do things such as a raw, uncut video version of the podcast, plus a 10-minute exclusive pre-show. It gets gritty and raw. Mistakes, they happen all the time in life. They happen to me all the time. I sound like an idiot sometimes, but hey, you can check that out for just $1 a month. For $5 a month, you get early access. You get your name inserted at the end of our YouTube videos. That's a Canadian dollar, Keith.
It is.
So
this
for five
is all
of those,
you need to get raw.
Yeah.
To get raw.
But if you
want,
want,
do I have 5 of them? I probably have 5 of them.
Otherwise, blame Keith. Nice shirt, man. We got to get a Blame Keith shirt going up at some point. But gang,
that'd be cool, wouldn't it?
Thank you so much for watching. This has been it for Debate That. Leave recommendations. Whoa, that's a tough word. It's been a lengthy time. We're not going to fade away into the sunset and look for Hershey the Wonder Dog, because he's awesome. So thank you for watching, and we'll be back with a lot more right here on Byte That. Done.